Welcome to this video on what's new for GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code 1.112 that was released in March 2026. Follow me along as I demo the new features. Enjoy! Message steering and queuing was already available since the last update of VS Code. So what you could do, and that is visible in my previous video, is while Copilot is busy, you can send additional requests, and there's different ways of handling that. It can put it in the queue to be handled once the agent session is completed or once the current tool call has completed. It can also stop the execution of the current session and then execute your request, of course. That's the last option. But this was only available for a regular agent session, and now it's also available when you run a background agent session, or in other words, a Copilot CLI. So I prepared a nice prompt for you that will keep Copilot a little bit busy, and that will allow me to show you what we can do in the meanwhile. So what you see here is what I'm going to ask you to add the fuel capacity and a calculated property to return the fuel economy based on the range, because the range is already a property of a plane, but the fuel capacity isn't, and because we have the two numbers, we can combine them, etc. So I'm going to execute this, and in the meanwhile, I can type, please also add unit tests for any changes you apply. And I get a button here. So the default behavior is steer with message. You can change this through the settings of GitHub Copilot, but you also have a pull-down menu and you have other options. So like I told you, you can steer with message. That would queue it after the current tool call. You can add to queue. So that means that the message is sent once Copilot is completely completed, and you can stop and send. That would stop current execution. So in this case, it is an additional requirement. So I don't like it to stop. I don't like it to wait until it's fully completed, but I do want to pick it up while it's busy. So I do steer with message, and in this case, it picked it up immediately because it was apparently waiting for some work to be done. So that's cool. Picked it up, and you will see that it will generate unit tests. It even asks me here if I would like to run the tests. So that looks good. It's running the tests. It's going to run the tests. And then everything should be implemented. So 3 options here, same options as you would have in a regular agent session. Check out my last video on the Visual Studio Code 1.111 because there I did the demo on the regular agent steering. When I start a Copilot background agent or CLI session, and I have pending changes in my workspace, Copilot always asks me what I like to do with these changes. And you can imagine that in some cases you want to take along those changes into the background agent session, and in some cases you might not. In this case, I have 3 changes here, and I'm going to ask the Copilot CLI by @CLI to add a wingspan property to the plane model, and it is going to ask me what I want to do with those changes. So that's not new, but what is new is I can expand here and I can actually see what files it is about. Funny thing is, if I click them, I just see the new version of the file. So I don't see a diff, and I think that's a small bug that will probably be solved very soon, because what I would expect is that it would open up the plane, the plane.cs in a diff view like this, so you could actually see what kind of changes are taken along into the work tree that Copilot CLI will use, and yeah, that would make sense, right? So at least it helps you identify what is taken along into the CLI agent session. So you know what to do here, either to copy the changes or to skip the changes, and you can also move the changes. So copy changes would copy the changes into the CLI worktree environment. Move changes would undo them here in the current workspace and would take them along into the session. Skip changes would just leave them here and you get a clean worktree without these changes. So for the CLI session. With Visual Studio Code 1.1.11, the autopilot function was introduced. And autopilot is very similar to YOLO mode that you might know from other AI coding assistants. And it means that it will never ask for your approval to run anything. So MCP servers, tools, sensitive files, it will all run them, edit them without your approval. And for background agent sessions, that of course speeds up a lot, but there's also a lot of risk. So be very conscious when you use this feature. But now you can also use this feature in CLI. As you can see, I chose here a CLI instead of local. And I have this menu with default approvals and bypass approvals. To enable autopilot, there is one central setting that configures autopilot for regular agent sessions as well as for CLI sessions. So to enable this, I need to go to settings and to filter on chat.autopilot.enabled. And when you check this box, you will see that we get an additional item here in the menu, autopilot. That is the specific mode. And when you select it, you will get a prompt that will notify you and it will warn you mainly about the risks in this. I would always recommend to run this either in a dev container or on GitHub Codespaces, because then the risk is very, well, not very limited, but is limited in terms of what it can do. So be conscious about this, but yeah, it is a very cool setting, so certainly play around with it. So enjoy it. Sometimes the Copilot agent doesn't respond in the way you want. And sometimes it's pretty hard to find out what went wrong. They introduced a /troubleshoot command, and that should help in these kind of situations. So to enable this, you first need to go to settings, because there are two settings that need to be enabled. One is chat.agent debug log.enabled, quite a long one. So in my case, it's already switched on. The default is not switched on. So yeah, keep that in mind. And the other one is the same debug log.file logging.enabled. Yes, there we go. So this will ensure that JSON-L files are written to disk locally for diagnostic purposes. So these two settings you need to have enabled. If you want to review them, take a look at the release notes. They are there. And so for this situation, I did create an instructions file specifically for C# files, and I made a mistake in here intentionally. So instead of CS files, I highlighted CSP, which doesn't exist. So this instruction to add XML comments to any new function or any new method is not picked up. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go to our controller, the planes controller, and I'm going to ask Copilot to create a method to randomly retrieve an airplane. So let's see what happens. Add a method to retrieve a random airplane. And it should generate the method, and it shouldn't it shouldn't put any XML comments in place. So let's see, it's reading the file, it's probably looking if there is an existing method already there. If not, it will create it. There we go, we have a new method, getRandom. That's great. And now we're going to address the problem. So I'm going to ask, using /troubleshoot, why is the instruction for XML comments not picked up? So I'm quite explicit here. From what I've seen is that Copilot does not always pick up your intent in the right way. So when you're more explicit, also troubleshooting works a lot better. So what it found, let's see if it found it. The debug log shows that only the C# instruction is being loaded and no instruction related to XML comments. So XML comment guidance is included with C# instruction, not a separate instruction. If you expect a separate instruction, well, that's funny. In this case, well, it did not explicitly find the problem. In my previous session, it did. So I'll show you. So in this case, I asked why is the instruction for XML comments not picked up? And here it correctly identifies the fact that it filters by CSV file. So as you can see, it's quite sensitive to the way you ask it. I assume that this behavior will improve over time. But yeah, try it out and provide feedback if you have either positive or negative experiences with it. At least it is a start to help you find out why it's not picking up instructions, why it's not picking up skills, why a certain custom agent is not behaving like you would expect. So yeah, try it out, /troubleshoot. When debugging GitHub Copilot using the new debug panel, let's open it up. So opening the command here, and there is immediately, yeah, you can filter of course for it. In my case, it's at the top. So if you search for agent debug logs, you can open them up. These are the debug logs, and I can open them up. I showed them last time. I explained them quite well in my video on Visual Studio Code 1.1.11. What you can do now is you can share them by exporting them. So you can export agent debug log. So let's open up the last or the bottom one, retrieve random airplane method implementation, and then we're going to export that as a JSON-L file or JSON file actually. And then you can import it. So there we go. Here it is. And as you can see that it's imported. And if I would go back to my overview, you can see that I already imported one twice. That was one test, of course, on beforehand, and this is the current run. You can't remove them though, so I guess that feature will still be implemented. But I can open it and I can view this session as if it were mine. So I can go into the flowchart here, open the tool and see all of the details. So because all of the details are shared, be very careful with this. If there's personal data in it, and of course there always is some personal data. So review the file if there's any sensitive data in it before sharing, because it might contain a lot of personal data. But yeah, useful feature certainly for debugging if you're working with your team to debug a certain chat, and you can share these kind of files. Agents can now read images and binary content. And images is clear. Binary content, I have no idea what they expected to do, but for images, I do have a demo, and that's pretty cool. I made a screenshot of our front end, and our front end is really ugly, but okay. But there is some overlap in the text that we have. And I would like Copilot to analyze the image, the screenshot, and to tell me what is wrong and maybe fix it. So I prepared a prompt. I'm going to close the screenshot so that it needs to discover it itself. And my question is to analyze the screenshot and check if there's any overlapping content resulting in unreadable text. I did try this out with GPT 4.1 and it didn't pick up on that image. So it is a little bit depending on the model that you use, if it will work. So let me kick off this prompt and let's see what Cloud Sonnet 4.6 makes from this. So it's searching for the file and it did find it, it viewed it, and it's now analyzing, and it already detected quite some issues here. There is overlapping content in the banner header area, illustration, decorative star/arrow shape, overlap heading text, etc. So it found the place in our code where the issue is. So, and it's actually fixing it. So that's pretty cool. It changed a TypeScript file, apparently some CSS classes that were not correct. So that is pretty amazing, right? So that makes it way easier to do front-end development. Just provide a screenshot to show Copilot behavior, let it analyze it, and then this used to be possible already because you could paste an image, but now you can just select an image here at the left-hand side and have that as input. That works pretty well. There is more in this feature. One of the features is that there is an image carousel available. You do need to enable this, and I can't demo this, I'm afraid. I can show you the setting, which is chat.image carousel.enabled. There we go, that's this setting. And if you select that and there is a chat attachment with an image, you can preview it. There's also another setting, Explorer context menu enabled, and I don't know if I'm going to use it personally. I don't see a lot of added value, but it is there. So if you enable it, you can right click an image from your Explorer, from your Windows Explorer in my case, and then choose open in image carousel, and then it would open that image right here in VS Code. So that's the 3 features that were released, and there was one that I could actually demo, and I think also that's the most amazing part of this feature, that Copilot can really analyze images that are inside of your project. Referencing your code, you have a lot of options. You can of course do hash and then a file name like plains controller here, and you can reference symbols like here get random. Once you have the file open, obviously, because otherwise it doesn't work. And you can see it translates into sim : and then the symbol name, even with a reference to the file it is in, or the class it is in. No, it's not the class that it's in, it's what it returns in this case. So, so that is already very useful. And what you can now do is you can also copy a symbol, and then if I paste it, it would automatically translate that to a symbol. So that is, I like that a lot. It makes it even easier. Let's see if this works as well. Yeah, variables work as well. And if you would like to just copy the name, you can do so and then paste as text. And on Windows, that's Ctrl-Shift-V. And on Mac, that would be Command-Shift-V. So there is still a possibility of regular copy pasting, but the default behavior is to copy it, paste it as a symbol. Custom instructions and custom agents and skills are things that you put in the .github folder normally in the root of your repository. If you have a big mono repository, for example, generally you don't open that full repository, but you open a subfolder instead. And then these files are not discovered. But that has changed. So if I go to settings and I type in chat.use customizations in parent repositories. It's a long term, and you switch this on, it does recognize the customizations in your parent repository. You will need to reload the window, but I'm gonna reload my window anyway. If you want to know, press F1 on your keyboard or Ctrl+Shift+P, and then there's a developer reload window that will do the trick. But first I'm going to create an agent. So I'm gonna create a custom agent in my GitHub Agents folder, and I'm gonna call it a janitor. It cleans up, and I'm gonna keep it very, very simple. Clean up unused code. Right, so that's it. So it is here, and you will see from the agent menu that we now have a janitor that wasn't there before. I'm gonna open now my Write Brothers API folder, so inside of my repository, and that contains the API and the API tests, but no front end. So this is only the backend code, and you will see that now from the agent menu I do have the janitor available, although I don't have a .github folder, so it does get this from the parent repository. And the same applies to skills, to custom instructions, to the Copilot instructions. Any customization that you could think of that lands in the .github directory will be picked up. But you do need to enable that setting. MCP servers are a really powerful feature available in GitHub Copilot. MCP servers, when installed, are picked up by the agent automatically and started as well. If you don't want that, if you want to disable, for example, an MCP server, that wasn't possible before. Now it is possible, and we have a really great interface for that. And I can't remember that I have seen this interface. And sorry, maybe that went a little bit too fast. I pressed F1 on my keyboard or Ctrl+Shift+P, and opens up the command prompt, of course, or the command bar. And here I can type chat : open customizations, and that would reveal this window. And the great thing is that all of the customizations available in Visual Studio Code for GitHub Copilot are available right here. I can even open up the agents. For example, the default ask agent, I can click it and I can read the system prompt. Of course, there are other ways to open this, but it's great to have everything together here. Skills that are available, even skills that are, for example, in your user profile. You can see them here, you can open them up, see what's in the skill.md. So yeah, it's a great feature. But we were talking about MCP server, so let's go there. I do have the Playwright MCP server. I can right click it here and then disable. That would disable it currently, or you disable it for the workspace. So that's two options that you have right now. Let me disable it so you can see what happens. There you go, disabled, and now Copilot doesn't pick up anymore that specific MCP server.